Well, thank you very much. This is us, our wonderful 18-month-old daughter, Frida, my wife, Alli. We are first and foremost parents, and then farmers, and we wear many different hats as you do on the farm. And these are the organizations we represent. So the Urban Edge Farm, First Generation Farmers, which is our educational nonprofit, and Erggelet Brothers Wine, which is our newest venture in organic wine in the Bay Area. So we chose the title The American Family Farm Revisited after being invited to speak because that is a story we can tell very well, and it's a story we stand behind. So the American West was built on the family farm. And the family farm was that core unit that allowed for building of community, structure, and all of what we see here. And then throughout the 20th century, it turned into a mass market, which was great and created a lot of benefit and a lot of advances on all levels. But the question is, what takes the family farm in the 21st century? What is its responsibilities, and how can it be reinvented to meet new needs? This is in a nutshell how we'd like to structure it. So the story we have to tell is a story of 100 years of farming in California. So we're spearheading the fourth generation. We're going to take the challenges and experiences that were learned and discuss the perspectives that we're looking at and the challenges and responses that we're coming up with, and then wrap it up with a passion pitch for the family farm and how maybe everyone among you can support family farms and see a value in doing so. So one of the pioneers in sustainable farming, I think every field has a pioneer, and really a trailblazer in this field is Joel Salatin. Many of you may know him. Who doesn't know him? He published a great range of books. One of them, Folks, This Ain't Normal, is good. And if you just go over this quote, it gives you an idea of whose responsibility is it for, like, whose responsibility, like the food that is in front of us is a value chain, is a production chain, but who takes responsibility at what part of this chain? And we feel that the farmer, who is a lot of times at the beginning of this chain, is just so far removed that it's a discussion worth having. So to hop right in, some of you may know these labels, these labels have been on the market longer than we have been alive. Throughout the world, exported asparagus from Japan to Switzerland, and this is all the Cecchini family in the California Delta. Just to give you an idea, so we're right about 50 miles east as the crow flies to here. It is a delta formed by the major runoff off the foothills, which is the Sacramento River and the San Joaquin River, that form a sizable delta. It used to be tidal and was reclaimed at the end of the 19th century to create one of the largest connected agricultural and diverse areas in the United States, and basically fed the expansion of the West. And still every crop is grown in the delta, from cows to nut trees, and it's a very prolific agricultural production area. And this is I'll pass it on to Alli as she grew up here.
Yes, this is a picture that has been on in our family farm office for a long time. It's an aerial view, before drones were around, of our 1,100 acres. So if any of you are familiar with Discovery Bay, that is the housing development you see to the west, and our farm is to the east of that development, all alongside the river. These are great pictures of my family. So the first picture you see, the oldest one, are my grandparents, my great-grandparents, who immigrated here from Italy at the end of the late 1800s, early 1900s. The middle picture is the little boy in that picture is my father with his dad, so my grandfather. The picture up in the corner is my grandfather standing next to crates of asparagus, and the bottom one that I absolutely love is a picture of my dad harvesting asparagus with some great sideburns. This is a picture of our current family who is now operating the farm, my parents in the middle. And this is just an aerial footage of our farm, showing the diverse vegetable crops that we grow along the delta. We siphon directly out of the delta, and are able to grow beautiful crops because the soil that we grow on is called peat soil, which has about anywhere from a 20 to 40% organic content matter, which makes it great for high feeding crops like asparagus. This is just a picture to show that every single spear of asparagus that you see in the store is hand-picked. It is difficult to mechanize asparagus due to the size of the crowns that come out, and it takes a lot of people and a lot of labor. It's very expensive. Go ahead.
So, in a nutshell, the reason we're talking about the family farm is to give a larger context and to make it relatable, because this is a conflict that we have to deal with now. So I'm going to skip over this pretty quick, but the golden years for large mass-produced agriculture were definitely pre-1960, after the Second World War, labor availability, favorable policy. First crisis hit the family that at that point was about farming about 2,000 acres of asparagus and exporting worldwide. And the reason we showed so it's the hike of the interest rate under Carter to 20%. What probably hit a lot of businesses at that time, but it shows how vulnerable farmers are to changes in policy, because the only asset they manage is the land, and it's basically a lot of upfront cost and then one payday that is dependent on commodity price. So that exposure to bank, and basically the bank owns the asset, and many times, because you're dependent on operating lines. So this put many farmers out of business. And then the next crisis, just for completeness, was 1994. NAFTA was presented, and for us, basically the final effects we were feeling as of 2004, with the opening of or the facilitating of produce being sold in the American market, and a lot of competition on the price point and production cost. That, coupled with declining workforce and increased labor cost, basically put our family close to bankruptcy after 2 failing years. And it took our production, as you can see in the bottom 2 columns, down to 20 acres in 2017. Ultimately, we closed the shed, we sold the ranch in 2018, now replanted 5 acres of organic asparagus, and are basically reassessing new directions. This is when we come into the picture.
I was going to say the bottom line where it says production, the very bottom number is the overall production of asparagus acreage in California. So you can see as our numbers decline, every asparagus farmer in California's numbers were declining. So our story is not unique in that sense. It's very common across the board, California at least.
Yeah, so this is where we came into the picture, not at all being connected to the family farm, Alli, having grown up, but realizing that the family is now facing an existential threat that is more than just a bump in the road. After playing sports abroad, she moved back and tried to assess on how and what new models and what new value structures can be arranged to bring this business into the 21st century and make it successful and sustainable. So, apart from economic sustainability, succession planning. Many businesses face that challenge, passing on from generations, choosing a direction, personal decisions like family planning, updating our values and looking away from the single bottom line and seeing, just like speakers before us, how can other ranges of impact be accounted for, and also reassessing the idea of stewardship for the ground. So a farmer is responsible for the ground he farms, and it's more than just responsibility that it looks nice and there's no weeds. It's a responsibility that goes beyond that. Carbon responsibility, responsibility for the insects, animals, and the soil, which we take very serious. So we saw brain development, so we threw this slide in. And ultimately, even though this may be outdated because the woman makes all the decisions now, the center part is food. So the farmer's mission is still to feed into the value chain, and a lot of these products around these great halls started with farmers. And for our value system, apart from the plate of peaches and pluots we grow on the small orchard that we were able to acquire after selling the main ranch, this is the triptych that we're going by. You can sum it up to the triple bottom line, but ultimately it's coupling the necessity for economic sustainability with with a drive for social sustainability, so contributing to the community equity, and a strong focus on the environmental sustainability. So how can all three of those guide our business decisions, and how can we experiment and try out different models that resonate in all of these? So economic resilience, our consciousness of our footprint, and increased community equity. So the first experiment, I'll pass over to Alli.
When I came back, I graduated college and I lived in Europe for about 3 to 4 years. Came back to the farm and realized my parents were in this difficult time with the ranch. We were facing bankruptcy, we were in debt, and they didn't know what to do. So I asked them if I could take a stab at a few ideas, and so this was the first idea that came out of it. We had a huge asset, and a lot of community members were interested in learning about farming. So First Generation Farmers, which was a nonprofit organization, came out of that. First Generation Farmers' main goal was to educate the community. So we do a lot with youth education programs, field trips on site on the farm and actually going to schools, and a lot with food access. So any of the extra food that we would have from a harvest, we would pair up with the local food banks, most specifically loaves and fishes. So these are our achievements to date. 200 farm explorers, which more or less are people coming to live and work on the farm. A lot of them are college students in between gap years that are thinking about pursuing a career in agriculture. We've had 6,000 students, children, come to our farm. 132 schools we have serviced in one form or another, and 168 field trips coming to our farm.
And just for a brief glimpse, I realize we don't have audio, so I'll skip over this. The reason we like to show this video is because what we teach the children is not just where does your apple come from. What we teach children is to understand the circular economy and realize that they can have an impact. They can have a little compost pile at home and they can plant just one plant and grow a consciousness that they can have an impact and can make choices where their food comes from. And I think in the larger context of being conscientious, I think that's great. So this is our farm craft game. So the kids build a farm out of recycle waste, and they spend days building it and are motivated, and they run around the farm and they understand all the aspects that required on a functioning farm.
And then by the end of the week, the bank comes and offers them a price for their farm, and they have to decide whether they want to preserve and do a land conservation on their farm, or if they want to sell, and then we take like monopoly houses and just take over their farm. So it's trying to teach children about land conservation as well. Our next case study was the Urban Edge farming program. This was an adult program. We had a lot of interest in adults wanting to pursue careers in agriculture, so we applied to the USDA for a beginning farmer, rancher, and development grant. That's the whole title. And we have 4 beginning farmers that are still currently farming on our farm with us. We serve as their mentors. We help them seek funding, help them everything from starting their seed to going to market.
And this is us today. So we took the lessons we learned from the nonprofit sector, the community engagement sector, and the organic advocacy sector, the lessons we learned from teaching and training beginning farmers, and we put it to a test. So we managed to purchase a small failing orchard that is basically a food forest, 90 varietals planted of stone fruit on 20 acres, plus 10 acres of row crop, where we transitioned our row crop over, plus a 20-acre vineyard and 5 acres of asparagus, and we're trying to now do both. So couple the economic sustainability, couple the social sustainability with the community impact and the responsibility for the ground we farm on. Now the urban edge, we're on the friction, we're on the outer edge of urban development. So if you look in one direction, you see houses, and on the other side, it's open farmland, cowboys, and peach trees, and trucks. So that's an interesting point of friction because it's 2 very different populations that don't know each other. So we try to be the connector and get those people together and teach and introduce the one side to the other side while being a resource for the community. So we have a farm store on site that's year-round, run by mainly volunteers out of the community that sells a wide range of all of our products, plus local secondary products from the community while we're developing our own. We grow the only asparagus in the Bay Area, so 5 acres of specialty organic asparagus hitting the market in about 3 weeks. We're developing a whole range of secondary products based mainly on our fruit, and that is again, we already have pickle products established. We're working on jams and working with co-packers to scale that up onto the market. We're active at community events, if you look at the bottom left. So we represent farming, we teach farming, we go to children's events, we still have that interaction. And this is our little daughter eating the cover crop that we plant. So we take the ground really serious. Plant flowers, plant hedgerows, plant trees, and build an ecosystem, a biodiverse ecosystem, rather than just working the ground and looking at profits. And then the bottom right is the lessons we learned from teaching, is that if we do it, it is a minimal impact. But if we can leverage that experience and share it with other farmers, that's really where we can create a wave to add to that community impact, but also add to that environmental impact. So we host classes, we consult for farmers, we consult for other organizations across the United States that have challenges defining a model, and that took us to launch our wine brand. I came to the United States as a winemaker in 2014 passed through Spain, but I'm German born and bred, and I found myself in Contra Costa with some of the oldest vineyard plantings in California that are being torn out for housing developments. And this, for a winemaker, is incredible because it's not replaceable. Age is not replaceable. So with these farmers going out of business, we've been trying to leverage that into working brands to keep these vineyards in production, and like to think that we have done so and kept those vineyards planted. Alli?
So the family farm worth fighting for. For me, the main two things why I believe the family farm is worth fighting for is our children. So just like my grandfather and my father kept the farm alive for me, it's my job to keep it alive for my daughter and whoever comes after her. It's not my farm, it was not my father's farm, and it is for us to pass it on. And it is our duty and responsibility to figure out how we can make it dynamic in that way. And then the quality of life. We love being on a farm, we love working where we live and living where we work. So those are the most important values for us.
Yeah, and I'd maybe want to pick out the first, so the resilience. I do think it's, like, we feel a strong impact that we have on the community. Just adding, as farmers, providing the community with fresh produce and also the learning space. The feedback that we get is really that it adds to the education of the community, and people take pride in it. I think that's a big one for us. And then flavor and heritage. So having a background in winemaking and culinary, for me the biggest discovery and argument was that the farmer is responsible for safeguarding flavor and experimenting. So if the farmer is not motivated to safeguard heirloom varietals, to go forage old orchards and find cherry cuttings from the 18th century and see if they'll grow, like the quest for flavor coupled with the ability to grow, I think in the changing marketplace today that is geared very much towards quality, the farmer is a crucial player in preserving those flavors and finding new flavors and figuring out how to grow them and to get away from like uniflavor products.
So we're losing about 1.5 million acres of farmland per year in the United States. And with the average age of a farmer nearing 60, 70% of farmland will be changing hands over the next 20 years. So it's just our little pitch and advocacy: no farmers, no food, no future.
And to wrap up the presentation, another pioneer in the sustainable farming space is Wendell Berry, who spoke on a lot of topics throughout the last 40 years, 50 years. But he is a strong advocate for farmers, and I like this quote because it rings true then and it rings true now. Why do we do all of this? It is not comfortable. It's not because we chose to do it. It is because we love it and we can, and we see more than just a business in it. And I think having that as a take-home message, to think about the family farm and how crucial it can be in the community, and seeing what for opportunities are to interact with the family farm and help them grow, I think that for us would be mission accomplished today.